And the little synthy things, there's detail in there that I think the mastering brings out a little bit by adding, you know, some of the upper mid frequencies. Most of the EQ in that I think was on their vocals to try and push that forward, but not change the way they sound. As soon as I start mastering and EQing vocals, and somebody hears themselves the way they don't hear themselves, I blew it. So, you know, you're dancing around trying to make sure you're honoring the song and what the intention and how it all sounds versus what you think might add a little shine to it. And then the last thing that I do, and I think this is more for those things that felt like they're moving around, is open up some top-end shelf EQ, kind of really up their dog hearing stuff, because it's not really defined. It's not, you can't pinpoint it. It's more of a feeling thing than it is this is the exact frequency I'm going to use for that. I've been doing that a lot on almost everything I do because, you know, however you listen to music, most people are listening to streaming, and there's a compromise in doing that, obviously. So if I can find a way to get it to a DSP before it gets uploaded and compressed again, however they're going to do it, and have enough life in there that whatever happens, there's still some of that retention when it's played back through your earbuds. That's kind of the dream for me, to retain any of that movement and that detail. Any questions on that? Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned briefly about how this record in particular you wanted to kind of round out and soften the low end. I know you credit a lot of your mastering to the console that you have in the studio, but how would one of like us that are younger go? We're only working inside the box, me particularly.
Right.
So how would we approach softening and rounding out that bottom end with just a 2-track inside the box?
Well, I mean, like this mix was a great mix. You can master, I mean, everybody's heard the polishing a turd term. It's hard to polish a turd, so this mix was great to begin with. I think I have a little EQ on that kick to pronounce it a little bit more. So you're gonna find that frequency, right? The console that I work on, and they might pull up a picture of it later, I have set frequencies. There's 30 of them. There's no Q adjustment on anything. It is what it is. I move in half dB or full dB increments. For me, it's great because it forces me into a decision. Like, this thing works, this doesn't work. Move on to another set of frequencies, because that's really all I can do. I'm working in, dynamic range and EQ frequencies. So on the bottom, sometimes, like, if a kick needs more pronouncement, you can play around and say 100 to 150, depending on what the kick is. And whether you're, like, sometimes I'll tuck those frequencies but then boost underneath that, and that tends to round out the sound a lot. But in a lot of hip hop, the power is not in the sub, power's in the top of the kick. So you don't want to pull too much of that out. You know what I mean? Like, 808s are great, but 808s do what 808s do whether I touch them or not, right? They're big and round, and I want to leave them alone. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on the song. It's not like, here's the preset for hip hop, boom, do all your hip hop tracks. One sec. I don't want you to yell.
Working with the 2-track, you're saying you want to EQ that kick differently? Are you putting the EQ over the whole track as a whole?
Yeah, so like in mastering, I can't just isolate individual instruments or elements in a mix. If there's something happening in those frequencies and I add or subtract EQ, I'm adding and subtracting EQ to everything in that frequency, which is why it's, to me, it's dangerous at times to play with vocals, because like, you get into upper ranges of where a vocal lives, you're getting into percussive things, you're getting into snares and hi-hats, and at the end of the day, mastering is a compromise, and what compromise is worth making? If I accentuate this snare hit throughout a track, but it makes the vocal brighter and changes the way that person sounds, maybe it's not worth turning that snare up a little bit, you know what I mean? But it's a lot of trial and error, and part of the process for us is we're sending a reference, so whatever I do, it's not like, oh, we're putting this right out tomorrow. Like, somebody's signing off on it, the label's listening to it, they're giving their feedback. Maybe I went a little too crazy with it, maybe I didn't go crazy enough. I mean, it's a lot of trial and error. And like I said when I started, I'm lucky to have worked in the same room for 20 years. Like, so I know that room. If I went in your room, I'm ass out because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm hearing. I don't know what's true. So a lot of it is repetition, you know, just doing over and over again, failing, succeeding, failing 5 times before you succeed again. But playing around with it, you know, and then I find for myself, my first instinct is usually the right one. And because I overthink things, ask anybody that works with me, I overthink things to my own detriment, that I go home and listen to the shit I mastered that day and think, oh, I'm garbage. Why did we send that out? And then I come into the studio the next day and they're like, oh, cool, they approved the album. Well, great, all right, well, then I'm an idiot. So, you know, not being afraid to make mistakes. You know, nobody wants to pay for your mistake. Like, if I screw things up, I'm not charging you to fix them all. But, you know, I don't know if that answers your question. Hopefully it did. Anybody else?
So the thing I've always struggled with is getting my center image forward
Right.
enough as a mixer. And I even think the balance is right between the stereo and energy. But I've always been unhappy. Besides, well, that says something else. That's right on. Is there anything I can do as a mixer besides like turn down sensor guitars and wide things?
To get your vocal forward?
Vocal and drums. It's something in the center image.
Right.
Comes from.
I don't mix.
Right.
I don't.
Or is that something that should be saved for mastering?
Not necessarily. Like, I'm not gonna give you mix advice purely because I've never mixed a song.
Is that an MS
I don't
thing
ever want to. Sorry.
Is that an MS thing where you split it?
No, I mean, like, I can add some EQ and frequencies where those vocals are to give you a perceived vocal up.
But I mean, it was even with the drums.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a less is more guy, so I don't, like, let me put a ton of EQ on your drums and then work my way back. I'd rather start gently and have you say, those need to be more aggressive. Let's give those a little more oomph, if you will. I really don't know the answer to that. No, I don't really, like, people ask me all the time if I spread images, you know, if I'm doing a lot of that, and I'm not purposefully. I think through the EQs, you know, you put a little top and put a little bottom and you got a little, you know, that way. But like a vocal up thing in the mix, I'm not the guy to ask. All these guys,
Sure.
They might have been the guy to ask.
It seems like it's something that happens in the mastering process to where
To boost
that center
vocal?
image, yeah.
I
mean, you know,
like, I know, like Ollie, who did most of the Kendrick Lamar stuff, like, I know that he mixes in mono a lot, and maybe that helps him with that vocal, because then when he spreads it, he's got this beautiful width to his mix. I don't know. I always master what I'm given, right? So whether you give me stems, which I'm not a huge fan of, because then you're involving me in your mixing thing, and I don't want to do that, and unless you want to pay me to do that, then I'll do that. But I'll always master what you bring, and then we can have a conversation about that. And part of how I like to handle my clients, like, I love attended sessions. I know there's a lot of people that are like, I don't want you in the room, I want to do my thing. I love people in my room because I need to know what you want. I'll do what I want regardless, but if you tell me, hey, I'm going for this vibe, hey, I don't want this to stand out, or I do want this to stand out, I need to have that conversation either with the artist, with the mix engineer, with the producer, with somebody, But today, you know, it's not like it was 20 years ago where everybody always show up. Now it's like, download my album, or here's my thumb drive with 2 years worth of my life on it. Do what you do, and that's flattering. Like, I'm glad that people trust me to do that. But it's hugely important to me to have a conversation with somebody at some point.
Right.
Whether it's after I've done my mastering and they're like, nope. Okay, well tell me then why nope, because I'll fix that. But yeah, I mean, I find that a lot of people will hear my mastering, then maybe go back and address the mix, give me a recall, and say, just run it the exact same way you did, I fixed me. You know what I mean? So it's a dance that you do. Like, who's gonna fix this? Are you gonna fix this, or am I gonna try and fix this? Yeah.
Just a couple of questions. One, when you do master, do you tend to use low pass, high pass filters?
No.
Nope, don't touch them.
No.
And also another one is that when you're mastering, are you constantly paying attention to the LUFs and things like that, or you just go by ear?
I don't, because that's a good question. That's the question most people end up asking. I don't, because I know the room. I think it's just years of knowing how loud is loud enough. I'm loud, right? Like Spotify with their -14 thing. I'm not bad, but it's genre specific. I can do that, but nobody. Here's the reality of the music business. The business part of it gets in the way. Nobody has a budget to master 4 different ways for every platform. They want one master, whether it's a major or an indie or Joe Schmo down the street. So I'm trying to make sure that